So people are wanting to know what would happen if the United States invaded Canada. And of course, there's definitely going to be a few comparisons to real world events. But let's just talk about the immediate impact, right? Most likely, what would happen is the United States would have a military excursion, as they would call it, into Canada, and it would be a show of force, and a couple or even dozens of Canadian soldiers would die, get shot. I don't think a missile would be fired in the best case scenario, but it would be a military excursion, a show of force. A few Canadian soldiers would die, and that would be that, right? And for the next 100 years, if we live that long, the next 100 years, we'd all be wondering what's going to happen with Canada and the United States. But in case that doesn't quite happen, in case they are a threat to our sovereignty, the most fucked up thing is I want you to imagine the response of either the US government or Canada. If a United States soldier shot a Canadian dead in the streets, right? If there was a full scale invasion and our military could not respond quick enough, if it was infantry, right? If there were soldiers in the streets of Toronto, right? It's not like they could just have a Canadian jet roll by and our entire problem would be solved, right? Military US soldiers in Toronto streets would mean potentially a lot of Canadians dying, right? And they could bring a tank in, they could bring a jet in, but if there's infantry, it's a really scary proposition. Even scarier is you could imagine if the United States invaded and it was a full takeover. The United States, if a Canadian citizen tried to defend themselves or people around them, the United States, there wouldn't be much skating after Canada was invaded. They said fuck that, fuck your hockey, that shit's lame. Uh, Basically, the United States could, in essence, capture a Canadian citizen and jail them forever. Oh, you assaulted a United States soldier. Well, that's even though it's your laws, your sovereignty, your Canadian law, they could put a Canadian citizen in jail because they invaded you, right? And they could say, oh, well, you hit an American soldier. That's serious jail time. That's like 10 years in prison, if not life. Right? If you killed a Canadian soldier, they say, oh, well, we invaded you, and now we'll just put you in prison for life. Even scarier is if the Canadian government has no fucking, balls. They have no grit or willpower to really punish the American invaders, right? Either they bow to their threat to their sovereignty, which I don't think will happen, or they just are weak. There's a military excursion, and they fucked off, and now Canadians are being jailed. Canadian citizens are being jailed by the Canadian government for either assaulting an American officer or even killing an officer in defense, right? They invade your country and you kill an American officer, and Canada is so pussy and soft that they jail you forever. So I want you to imagine that scenario. I want you to imagine Canadians suffering the utmost extent. And it's going to be people of color, right? It's going to be people of color. There could be open air prisons, your skating rink stadium, your hockey rink, your Rogers Stadium. It could become prisons, right? There could be food or cargo that may never get delivered, and you may die in some of the most, well-known establishments, Canadian local places that you go to every day. That could be a prison for you where you die and don't get food.